The PCPD hasn't caught a real criminal in years, so why is anyone shocked the body's missing? Apparently, the Port Charles Police Department now doubles as a performance art troupe, heavy on dramatics, light on results. It's not just that they haven't caught anyone, it's that they never do. Justice in this town isn't blind, it's napping. Let's start with Laura, a woman who once shared a life on the run with Luke Spencer, a man who made dodging danger an Olympic sport, should hardly be floundering now. If anyone knows how to outmaneuver chaos, it's Laura. Yet here she is, inexplicably unprepared, as if decades of ducking bullets and slipping through mob nets never happened. Laura Spencer, reduced to needing pep talks? Unlikely. She was married to Luke, for heaven's sake. Handle it. Then there's Brennan. It's obvious he's closing in on Carly, and the fact that this isn't being treated as more urgent borders on malpractice. But urgency has never been a specialty in Port Charles, has it? Now, Dalton's body, or rather not Dalton's body, when the corpse inevitably vanishes from where it was last stashed, there will be shock. Because apparently no one has considered the incredibly basic possibility that a body might be moved, especially when Jason Morgan is involved. Naturally, he didn't dispose of it. He relocated it, likely to give it a proper mob makeover. After all, Sonny did assure Laura her car would be back in the driveway, sparkling clean by morning. Mob courtesy, of course. And speaking of Jason, wouldn't it have been poetic if he had just dumped Dalton on Spoon Island? A scenic little send-off with enough symbolism to make Shakespeare blush. Now to the farce that is the Drew shooting investigation. Whoever pulled that trigger clearly couldn't hit the broadside of Kelly's diner. Had it been Michael or Curtis, a trained ex-law enforcement professional, Drew would have been a memory. Instead, he's alive, largely because the shooter was an amateur with a badge and a borrowed gun. No, it wasn't Curtis. The silhouette seen fleeing the scene was a small framed figure, female, possibly curly-haired, not exactly matching Curtis's tall, bald profile, unless he's taken to wigs and disguise. But that doesn't stop the theory mill. Portia's name floats suspiciously near the top, though how she, or Curtis for that matter, would have acquired Edward Quartermain's gun is a puzzle no one seems interested in solving. The murder weapon's origin matters, but in typical Port Charles fashion, everyone's far too busy speculating wildly to ask the obvious questions. And what of the ever-saintly Willow? There she is, still suspiciously placed in the narrative. Drew's home was accessed with a key, and Curtis didn't have one. The shooter did. So unless Curtis is moonlighting as a locksmith, someone closer to Drew, and less obvious, is being conveniently overlooked. As for Curtis himself, if the story ends with Portia finally getting her due, and Jordan walking off with Curtis, it might just be the first decision the show gets right in months. Lastly, a brief note on Drew, or rather, the actor playing him, popping up in a Hallmark holiday film. It's difficult to separate the character from the actor when the former has been written with such dramatic ineptitude, though, credit where due, the jacket fit. In short, the town continues to spiral while those supposedly in charge remain either blind, bought, or baffled. But at least the dry cleaning is prompt, and the mob still knows how to keep things neat. The writers of General Hospital have officially forgotten who Laura Spencer is, and the proof is painful. Once upon a time, Laura Spencer was a woman who faked her way through death plots, outwitted international villains, and lived off-grid with Luke and their children. A fighter, a legend, a Spencer. But apparently, none of that matters anymore. In the current state of General Hospital, Laura is reduced to a trembling mess in the face of danger, as if she hasn't faced far worse than a man in the back seat of her car. Yes, she's the mayor now, but does that mean her spine has been surgically removed? The writers might want to revisit the 1980s and take notes from the version of Laura who didn't cower in fear. She calculated it. And while they're at it, they can also reevaluate the entire Willow and Drew debacle. The storyline has dragged on for what feels like 5 years, despite technically being half that. It's a never-ending carousel of tedium. If holiday spirit truly exists in Port Charles, the greatest Christmas gift would be an abrupt, unapologetic end to this narrative slog. Send them to Washington, D.C., Paris, Mars, anywhere but here. As for Drew, limping around like an off-Broadway Phantom of the Opera, still wielding that cane, isn't tragic, it's comedic. He was shot in the upper back, not the lumbar spine, yet he carries on as though he's auditioning for a Victorian-era invalid. Medical accuracy? Apparently not in the script budget. At this point, one half expects Jason to kick the cane out from under him again, and honestly, it might be the most compelling scene of the week. Meanwhile, the Sidwell situation is spiraling into comic book villain territory. The man has eyes everywhere, two of which, apparently, belong to Nathan, or whoever he's pretending to be this week. And if he truly orchestrated Rocco's attack, Sonny isn't going to let it slide. No, retaliation will be swift, personal, and bloody. Forget Lucas, Marco should serve as the warning. Port Charles runs on vengeance, and Sidwell has painted a target on his own back in neon. Speaking of bad decisions, Willow accepting the exact same engagement ring from Michael that she once received during their prior engagement is, frankly, absurd. It's not romantic, it's lazy. Call it bad luck, bad taste, or bad writing, but it certainly isn't believable. If ever a ring screamed emotional recycling, it's this one. Then there's Michael, seething, brooding, and clearly not over Willow. His fury isn't about custody or principle. It's unresolved heartbreak dressed up as righteous indignation. He doesn't want to co-parent, he wants control. But let's not pretend Willow is some innocent victim here. From choosing Drew as her rebound therapist counselor boyfriend to conducting trysts in her child's nursery, yes, that nursery, her judgment has been not just questionable, but outright reckless. And stalking Daisy? That's not maternal devotion, that's emotional instability. In light of this, Michael's resistance to letting Willow near Wiley and Amelia begins to look less like spite and more like common sense. After all, what message does it send to children when their mother allows her lover to tell them their father doesn't love them, or when said lover mysteriously survives an upper back wound only to emerge as the town's most dramatic cane enthusiast? Elsewhere in town, the Quartermain Thanksgiving seems to be lost in the shuffle, because nothing says holiday cheer like betrayal, assault, and a looming mob war. And with Vaughn presumably exiting, whatever spark existed between him and Jocelyn exits with him. Another pairing full of potential, sent packing without a proper send-off. As for Elizabeth, one shining moment of maturity in a sea of dysfunction. She refuses to take sides, refreshing, if fleeting. Let's hope it sticks. And finally, on a logistical note, Spoon Island, that eerie Gothic pile once requiring elaborate boat rides and dramatic entrances, is now apparently accessible via warp speed. Characters zip in and out of there like it's a convenience store. And yet, people are still shocked when terrible things happen there. It's the Winchester Mystery House of Port Charles, just with more secrets and worse lighting. In conclusion, General Hospital continues to wrestle its legacy characters into ill-fitting arcs, while propping up new ones with plots that insult both memory and intelligence. Here's hoping someone on the writing team remembers who these characters used to be, before the next ring is recycled, or the next cane is monologued into oblivion. Sonny's the villain? Really? Let's talk about who the real monster is in Port Charles. Let's dispense with the idea that Sonny somehow deserved to lose to Piers, because Lucas considers him a murderer for kidnapping Marco. That narrative conveniently omits one glaring detail. Marco is no innocent lamb. Unlike Rocco, who, for all intents and purposes, is blameless, Marco has always been neck-deep in murky waters. Sonny's actions, while morally gray, have at least been consistently rooted in a twisted form of protection. Marco? He's always been one whisper away from villainy. But if we're ranking villains, Sidwell deserves a special podium. His preferred tactic, weaponizing innocent children to manipulate Sonny, isn't just repulsive, it's cowardly. If he had even a shred of integrity, he'd confront Sonny directly. But no, Sidwell hides behind playgrounds and strollers, a spineless schemer who thinks endangering grandchildren is a display of strength. It's not. It's a neon sign that reads, "I am weak," And let's not pretend Sidwell's actions are some moral high ground compared to Sunny's. They're not. In fact, they're worse, far worse. There's a reckoning coming, and when Lucas finally learns who these people really are, Sidwell and Marco both, the fallout will dwarf anything Sunny ever did. Because say what you will about Sunny, but his loyalty to Lucas has been unwavering. He protected him time and time again. A fact Lucas seems to have conveniently forgotten. Then there's the walking cautionary tale, known as Willow. If there were awards for sheer idiocy in daytime television, she'd sweep the category. Dropping murder charges because she married Drew? That's not love. That's a case study in diminished capacity. And Drew, yes, Drew, the man who thinks recycling an engagement ring from a dead husband is a romantic gesture, continues to redefine cringe. And if that weren't enough, Willow has now handed over control of her children's ELQ stock to Drew, effectively giving him a majority share. Brilliant! Nothing says empowered woman like gifting financial control to the man you may or may not have accidentally tried to kill. As for the children, Wiley and Amelia are victims of maternal madness, caught between a fatal attraction and a lethal situationship. The next generation of Port Charles deserves better than the current parade of unhinged guardians. Meanwhile, Sidwell's survival instinct should be ringing in his ears. It's only a matter of time before someone, likely Michael and Lucky, perhaps founding members of a Sidwell Tried to Kill Me support group, comes knocking. Let's also not forget the lingering suspicion around Rocco's incident. Sidwell's fingerprints are likely all over that too. His days in Port Charles are numbered, or at least one can hope. Though considering Drew is still inexplicably present, hope might be overly optimistic. And speaking of Drew, one can't help but notice the stench of orchestration surrounding his shooting. Could it be that he staged the entire event just to frame Michael, reel Willow back in through pity and reassert control over her children? If he did, he had the motive, the means, and, unfortunately, the ego to pull it off. Access to the gun? Check. Delusions of grandeur? Double check. As for Chase, his pointed accusations and unresolved jealousy make him an entertaining wildcard in this circus. But the real show is Willow, who, if trends hold, will have another miraculous flashback any day now and realize she pulled the trigger herself. In short, Port Charles is overrun with cowards, manipulators, and lunatics masquerading as heroes. And somehow, Drew still thinks he's the protagonist. Here's what no one wants to admit about Willow and Drew's reunion. It's not a love story, it's a psychological thriller. It appears General Hospital is once again committed to answering questions no one asked and resurrecting romances no one missed. The announcement that Willow has agreed to remarry Drew Kane, affectionately dubbed Drewfus for his unmatched talent in emotional sabotage, reads less like a plot twist and more like a collective slap in the face to anyone still clinging to the hope of narrative logic. Let's not pretend this pairing is a case of star-crossed lovers. This is a woman who stood amid the emotional rubble of their last catastrophe and decided, yes, let's rebuild here, right on the fault line. If this were a course in personal growth, Willow just dropped out, lit her textbooks on fire, and declared a major in regressive decision-making. One must admire Drewfus's consistency, if nothing else. A man so committed to red flags, he may as well design them. His record includes gaslighting with the gusto of a department store sale, guilt-tripping at a frequency that would make pharmaceutical commercials jealous, and vanishing emotionally faster than his commitment to co-parenting. And yet, Willow, fully aware, fully sentient, says yes. Again. This isn't romantic redemption. This is psychological malpractice, wrapped in plot armor and sprayed with lavender to disguise the stench of regurgitated drama. After Daisy, Drew practically abandoned all prior obligations, like a gamer unlocking a new character and rage-quitting mid-mission. His children? Forgotten. Emotional depth? Abandoned. Accountability? Outsourced to the nearest storyline black hole. But sure, let's do this again. Let's pretend a fresh coat of soap opera sheen makes this wreckage worthy of a second wedding. The sequel no one demanded, starring two leads who appear to be in competition for who can exhibit the least self-awareness per episode. And while we're here, can we discuss the supporting cast of absurdities? Rocco, nearly calling Britt mom? Elizabeth possibly being Willow's maid of honor? And Michael, whose facial expression upon overhearing the news could have curdled milk, clearly plotting his own counter-wedding strategy, as if this were an emotional chess match held in a padded cell. Meanwhile, Chase remains oblivious, presumably off living in the real world where weddings don't double as group therapy sessions. And somewhere in the wings, Nina continues the proud family tradition of externalizing every bad decision like it's an Olympic sport. Accountability? That's for other people. And just for good measure, let's add the curious case of Mayor Laura Collins, inexplicably driving herself around like a common civilian. No driver, no security detail, just vibes and a potentially catastrophic lapse in protocol. But don't worry, if anyone questions it, they'll likely be shouted down by GH's ever-vigilant defenders of narrative absurdity. To recap, Drew has proposed, Willow has accepted. Elizabeth is measuring herself for bridesmaid attire. Michael is planning vengeance in tuxedo form. And the audience? Trapped in a Groundhog Day of poor decisions and plot-induced amnesia. The writers may call this storytelling. Others might call it a cry for help. Regardless, we'll all be watching, some with wine, most with disbelief, all with the distant hope that someone, anyone, will object before Drufus 2.0 becomes a reality. Because at this point, the only vows worth reciting are the ones we make to ourselves. Never trust a character arc that circles the drain this many times and still insists it's water skiing. Willow said yes, again, and yes, it's still Michael's grandmother's ring. Apparently, the writers at General Hospital have decided that the best way to ring in the holiday season is with another helping of Drew proposing to Willow. Because nothing says sweeps-worthy television like recycling an already abandoned engagement storyline and dressing it up as if it's something new. Yes, Drew is down on one knee again, clutching the very same engagement ring Michael once used, a cherished heirloom from Lila Quartermain, now being passed around like a pawn shop trinket. The word classy comes to mind, though not in the way intended. Let's set aside for a moment the fact that Willow already left Drew at the altar. This is not romantic tension. This is narrative amnesia. And while we're here, why is Drew still limping around on that ever-shortening cane? The man's recovery is slower than the show's pacing, and the cane now feels less like a medical aid and more like a crutch for lazy characterization. Meanwhile, the rest of Port Charles staggers through storylines with no resolution in sight. Rocco remains a lost child on a side plot no one has the will to close. Laura, having discovered Dalton's corpse in her trunk, continues to stiff upper lip her way through scenes, though one has to wonder how long she can maintain that composure before secrets start spilling. Jason, who disposed of the body in a way viewers were apparently deemed unworthy to see, is once again off-screen when the action should be unfolding. Then there's Liz, still inexplicably inserted into everyone's business without a plot line of her own. Either give the character a purpose or spare her the indignity of being the town's unpaid therapist. As for the criminally underused Tracy, her temporary exit feels less like a break and more like a hole in the plot. She needs to return post-haste, not only to reclaim Lila's ring and dismantle Drew's self-righteous facade, but to remind viewers what an actual legacy character looks like when properly written. Speaking of legacies, Michael remains oddly silent about what he saw the night Drew was shot. A conveniently withheld truth, no doubt being saved for the next artificially prolonged twist. And then, there's Carly, General Hospital's reigning queen of moral superiority. For someone who ignored warnings from every breathing body about Jack, including Sunny, Felicia, Anna, and even her 20-year confidant Jason, Carly somehow feels qualified to pass judgment on Lucas's relationship. Her condescending outrage preceded even the minor reveal about Jocelyn's job, making her indignation not only premature but hypocritical. The show desperately misses an actual super couple. Once upon a time, Luke and Laura were the beating heart of GH, on the run, chaotic, compelling. Now, we're left with Willow and Drew, tepid, recycled, forgettable. It's hard to root for a couple when their entire arc reads like the script was left on shuffle. Let's not forget Sidwell, the current villain who's apparently committed every conceivable crime short of tax evasion. He tried to kill Maxie, targeted Rocco, and still manages to hover around without consequence. But in this upside-down universe, it's Sonny who gets pegged as the bad man. Yes, Sonny. Mobster, patriarch, brother, and occasional moral compass. Strip away the organized crime, and what remains is a character infinitely more nuanced and human than the cold-blooded Sidwell. The comparison isn't even close. Still, viewers are asked to accept Sidwell as the necessary chaos and Drew as a viable romantic lead. It's exhausting. And insulting. The writers would do well to remember that viewers have memory, taste, and expectations. Qualities the show seems determined to test with every passing episode. Want a mystery worth watching? Pick up the Jason storyline where it was left off. Specifically, the car, the call from Sonny, and the not-so-small detail of a missing body. Instead, we get meandering speculation, shadowy silhouettes, and red herrings so poorly disguised, they might as well come with neon signs. At this point, even the wild theory that Stella, of all people, shot Drew is more compelling than anything actually happening on screen. Her height, the angle of the shot, the missing gun, the conveniently returned weapon after a tea date with Tracy, it's messy, but it's something. And something would be a welcome change from the nothing currently being served. Until then, here's hoping Nell claws her way back from the grave. She may have been a train wreck, but at least she made things interesting. Willow, by contrast, continues to deliver the dramatic range of lukewarm oatmeal. Enough with the Drew and Willow reruns. Enough with the dangling plotlines. Enough with the manufactured romance no one asked for. Give the viewers a story worth watching, or better yet, a character worth rooting for. Willow accepting that proposal would be the single dumbest moment in soap history. Let's begin with the obvious. Laura made the wrong call. If discretion, legality, and basic common sense were the goal, she should have reached out to Martin instead of Sonny. Martin has proven himself to be both knowledgeable and discreet. Yes, even with the infamous Lulu exception, and crucially, he operates within the confines of the law. Sonny, by contrast, is many things, but legal is not one of them. Meanwhile, in what may be the most baffling development in recent soap memory, Drew is apparently preparing to propose to Willow. Should she accept, she would easily cement her place as the most willfully obtuse character in soap opera history. A woman who has watched Drew spiral into manipulation, selfishness, and outright villainy somehow sees marriage as the next logical step? It's not love, it's a masterclass in delusion. Willow, if there's a shred of self-preservation left in that spine of yours, walk away. Actually, run. Let's talk Ned. One hopes he's recuperating well, but when he finally returns, expect revelations that will send shockwaves through Port Charles. Chiefly that Drew not only stole the boxes, but also abandoned Ned, leaving him for dead. Quite the business partner, that one. Over in another corner of chaos, Britt is playing a dangerous game by withholding information about Sidwell from Jason. This kind of silence doesn't make her mysterious. It makes her complicit. Then there's the perpetual mischaracterization of Laura. The notion that Laura wouldn't act like that is pure fan fiction. Anyone invoking that line clearly missed the last several decades of psychological whiplash this woman has endured. Laura has survived kidnappings, betrayals, institutionalizations, family breakdowns, and more. She doesn't get the luxury of reacting like a Hallmark heroine. Anyone unwilling to grasp the complexity of her evolution should start with the GH Fandom Wiki and proceed directly to Jeannie Francis's two-part conversation on Maurice Benard's podcast. It's a far better use of time than whatever Drew and Willow think they're doing. Brennan, for his part, is shedding his charming veneer at a suspiciously convenient pace. It wouldn't be at all surprising if he had a hand in Anna's kidnapping. If he's not guilty, he's certainly working overtime to look it. Now, about this year's Quartermain Thanksgiving. It's a shadow of its former chaotic glory. Tracy's luxuriating in a French spa, Ned remains hospitalized, Gio's found the emotional bandwidth to call Brooklyn mom, and Chase is practically living at Willow's side. Michael's busy dating Jacinda, whoever she is, and Jason and Danny are nowhere to be found. No pizza oven, no trademark dysfunction, just a husk of a once iconic tradition. The Dante-Gio Rocco situation is a masterclass in complicated parenting, layered with criminal stupidity. Dante's outburst at Gio wasn't favoritism, it was desperation. Rocco is teetering on the edge, trapped in juvenile hall, and facing federal charges. Gio, as the older brother, should have known better than to involve him in this downward spiral. Yes, Rocco, Danny, and Charlotte made their own choices, but Gio and Emma lit the match. Cause and effect, plain and simple. Dante and Lulu aren't dragging their other kids over the coals right now because they're trying, perhaps futilely, to keep Rocco from unraveling completely behind bars. But make no mistake, accountability is coming. And Gio would do well to remember that fatherly discipline comes with a mix of disappointment and love. Sonny said it best. You can be furious with your child and still love them to pieces. Gio better learn that distinction fast. Finally, Carly. Her rogue mission against Brennan is a slow-burning disaster. The only surprise will be how long it takes before she screams the inevitable, "Jason, save me!" Because nothing says independent woman like digging yourself into a hole only to beg the local hitman for rescue. And as for Rocco, what was done to him is inexcusable. When the full truth surfaces, expect Dante, Lulu, and even Sonny to unleash hell. Rightly so, because while this is a town built on secrets, vendettas, and bad decisions, there are still lines that shouldn't be crossed. That line? It's glowing neon, and half this cast just leapt over it. Here's what they don't want you to notice about General Hospital's big storylines. Sweep season. That magical time when General Hospital trades coherence for chaos and expects the audience to keep up as if this is all perfectly rational storytelling. As ever, the show delivers in full melodramatic force, though some of the narrative decisions beg for more scrutiny than applause. Let's start with the mystery that refuses to solve itself, the murdered judge, unceremoniously dumped in the water. It's the sort of stunning news Brooklyn and Chase are expected to react to with shock and awe, but viewers are still stuck wondering when the show plans to remember it left a judge floating in the harbor. Then there's Dalton's body, which, depending on the whim of the week, could be appearing on Sidwell's porch or in Laura's trunk. Why not just launch a citywide game of corpse hot potato and be done with it? Speaking of Laura, she's the mayor now. Again. Echoes of Luke's mayorship reverberate as she returns from the presumed dead, because apparently General Hospital has a strict policy: you're not really part of the team unless you've come back from the dead at least once. But this time, her proximity to Sonny raises more than eyebrows. Their long-standing friendship is being trotted out yet again, as though that overplayed bond is a suitable replacement for genuine character development. Which brings us to Sonny, a man who can mobilize an entire militia for Drew, but can't be bothered to assign protection to his own grandson, Rocco. Consistency? Not in Port Charles. Rocco ends up with a black eye and a busted lip right after Sonny's prison visit, which conveniently coincides with the inmates learning his father is a cop. The show practically gift wraps the implication. The guard failed, Sonny knew, and now Rocco pays. But sure, let's blame the stars instead. Then there's the running theory that Dalton's body in Laura's car is a setup, a tidy trap for Sonny, Jason, and Laura. The logic may be soap-thin, but at least it's more compelling than half the current arcs. On the subject of poor character returns, Britt's second act is increasingly grating. Once a fan favorite, her return has drained much of the charm she once had. And while we're on questionable transformations, Joss's brown hair may be meant to age her up for Vaughn's sake, but all it does is age her, period. Meanwhile, Elizabeth emerges as the unexpected voice of reason, advising Lucas to stop fighting Marco's battles and let the man grow a spine. It's rare that a character delivers sensible counsel these days, so credit where due. Lucas, for his part, may not have long for this storyline if his absence from the intro is any hint. One can only hope it's a sign that Brad will return, and the story will regain its pulse. Elsewhere in this web of intrigue, Vaughn seems to be the only one noticing that Brennan is sending Jocelyn into dangerous waters under the guise of mentorship. He's trying to protect her, while Brennan, presumably, is already making people disappear. That little mystery is bound to explode when Joss inevitably learns the truth and reacts with the standard issue righteous indignation. May 2026. Sweeps already promises to be an aerial circus of who threw who over the parapet at Windermere. Top contenders? Pascal and Sidwell, with Pascal finally tiring of servitude. Jack and Valentine, or perhaps Marco and Lucas in a tragic lover's quarrel. Take your pick. Someone's going over the edge. Back to Rocco, who looked perfectly fine before that visit. Then not so much afterward. Is Sonny just cursed, or is incompetence the new family legacy? And then there's Carly. Watching her barely stomach Jack is becoming a sport unto itself. Her disgust is palpable, and while she may keep her mouth shut for Joss's sake, it's clear she's already delivered the verdict. Jack is irredeemable. The recurring issue with Britt's keycard, the infamous fob, also rears its head. Sidwell already knows it was hers, so the whole charade about who accessed what feels like a prolonged stall tactic, not suspense. Finally, a note on reality. Bleeding into fiction. When actors like Nancy Grawn take aim at their own fans for differing views, the fourth wall starts to crack. Disagreement is one thing, but disdain doesn't make for good PR, especially when your audience is already enduring plotlines that defy reason. In the end, General Hospital remains the unpredictable, inconsistent, maddeningly addictive mess it's always been. But even in a town where people rise from the dead and bodies travel more than airline luggage, a little narrative consistency wouldn't hurt. Dark Michael rises again. Now that Drew and Willow are engaged again, Michael may be ready to play them at their own game after the November 25th, 2025 episode of General Hospital. Willow has simply no control when it comes to Drew. She'll do anything he says, whether it's betray everyone who loves her, frame her ex-husband for shooting him, or agree to marry him, again. The latter happened today when Willow moved back into Drew's house, a house she hasn't stepped foot in since he was shot. And with Willow back in his clutches, Drew used it as the perfect opportunity to propose to her with Lila's ring, the same ring Michael once proposed to her with. It's as messy as love in the afternoon gets, and things only got worse when Willow arrived at GH to share the good news with Elizabeth. Liz had just finished a conversation with Michael, where he admitted to her that he's given Willow plenty of chances, and she screwed everyone up. Now, out on bail, ahead of her trial for Drew's attempted murder, and Michael overhears his ex-wife's latest choice, marry Drew. The second Michael saw Lila's ring on her hand, the dark Michael inside of him began to rise once again. He's not going to let whatever these two have planned ruin his life again, and this time around, he'll probably have Jacinda's help in making sure of it. General Hospital spoilers for November 26th tease a stunned Chase and Brooklyn, and it could only be because of Willow's engagement. Chase has been determined to exonerate his ex-wife, and this engagement could either make or break his case. Joss may be the one who has to save Port Charles. General Hospital's Jocelyn is a WSB agent. Who would have thought? She is suddenly in the middle of a huge investigation. Will it be her time to shine? It was only a year ago that Jocelyn was a college student in love with a PCPD cadet. Things are very different now. Dex's death changed something in Joss, and although she may have been pressured to join the WSB, she jumped in and never looked back. She is suddenly right smack in the middle of a huge case. It may have started at the Five Poppies, but now something sinister is happening in Port Charles, and Joss may need to be the one to take down the bad guys. She has had Vaughn's support up until now, but Brennan has made him disappear, so Joss is on her own. Jack may not be a good guy, and Jocelyn will need to stop him. Is she up for the challenge? Anna was worried when she learned of Jocelyn's career choice. She is one of the best WSB agents of all time, and she feared for what the college student was getting herself into. If Joss is dedicated to the Bureau, Anna would be a great mentor for her. While Joss has a long way to go before she can fill Anna's shoes, taking down the evil forces currently in Port Charles is a great start. With Anna and Vaughn both missing, and Brennan questionable, who can she depend on? She doesn't know it yet, but help may be on the way. Carly and Valentin are hatching a plan to take down Jack. They could be the ones to help Joss get to the bottom of all this. This sounds like fun. The constant back and forth between these two needs to stop. Fans have been hoping for a Jason and Britt reunion since she returned to General Hospital, but their story has become somewhat frustrating, and so has Britt. It's time for her to let go of the attitude and let Jason in. Jason and Britt were an unlikely couple that somehow worked together. She let her guard down with him, and he truly cared for her. That all fell apart when he left her and chose to marry Carly for the good of the business and to save the family. The Britch and Stone Cold almost found their way back to each other, but he was presumed dead. And then she was, somehow. They are both miraculously alive and should have fallen into each other's arms. But that didn't happen. Britt is terrified of Sidwell, who appears to be keeping her alive with medication, and will not share her secrets with Jason. He desperately wants to help her, but she doesn't trust him. This may be due to her fear of Sidwell, or Jason's past betrayal, or both. These two have fallen into a pattern, and fans say they are getting bored with it. Jason offers help. Britt almost lets him in. Something comes up. Jason leaves to go help someone else. When he returns, she is furious and pushes him away. A few days later, it happens all over again. However, he is always calm and logical and begging to help her. She flies off the handle and throws their past in his face. It's likely that she will eventually tell him the whole truth, and he will save the day. This constant back and forth is only prolonging the inevitable. It's time for Britt to tear down her walls, let the past go, accept Jason for who he is, and allow him to help her deal with her deep, dark secret. General Hospital spoilers are in for Wednesday, November 26th, 2025. In tomorrow's episode, fans can expect Stella Henry to go to war. Lulu Spencer demands answers about Rocco Falconeri. Plus, Portia Robinson has a new reason to freak out. Keep reading and let's talk about what is coming up in the ABC soap opera. Let's start off with Lulu, who will be concerned about her son. Thankfully, Justine Turner was able to get Rocco's bail hearing moved up. However, fans and Britt Westbourne just learned that Jen Sidwell is responsible for Rocco's injuries. Back to Lulu, she will issue a demand. Then, she meets with Jason Morgan. The right-hand man warns the blonde that there is a reality they need to face. Over with Stella, she will be on the warpath. It seems she runs into Drew Kane. The woman asks how many more lives he plans on ruining this evening. If it is Drew she's talking to, then the congressman boasts that he always gets what he wants while stuffing his face with food. General Hospital spoilers for tomorrow's episode reveal that Willow Tate just accepted Drew's marriage proposal. Although stunned, Elizabeth Liz Baldwin agreed to attend the Thanksgiving wedding. What neither realizes is that Michael Corinthos overheard. In the next episode, Willow answers the door to see someone she doesn't seem to care for. It's not clear if this is Michael, Nina Reeves, or someone else. However, Willow assumes they are there to change her mind about the wedding. The next episode will also include Dante Falconeri urgently meeting with Nathan West. The commissioner says, "We gotta come up with an effective counter-argument." However, it is stated that Nathan ends up surprising Dante. Meanwhile, both Harrison Chase and Brooklyn Quartermain will be stunned. Then, a preview clip for tomorrow shows BLQ saying that this means a lot to him. Chase admits that it does. Also, Portia has a new reason to worry. Does this have to do with the baby, or is this about the fake alibi? Either case, Portia's problems seem to be mounting up, and I wonder what the future holds for her and the unborn baby. Which storyline are you looking forward to seeing the most on Wednesday, November 26th, 2025? Be sure to catch up on everything happening with GH right now. Come back here often for General Hospital spoilers, news, and updates. General Hospital spoilers claim the fans clutched their chests in unity last week when Dante Falconeri let Giovanni Gio Palmieri have it all over again. We were having flashbacks of the last hospital scene when Dante lost his cool on Gio, after Rocco Falconeri was brought into the emergency room suffering from near-fatal alcohol poisoning. Now, Dante has repeated his past mistake, as though he never really learned a lesson from that experience at all. And it looks like this time, it might really be a sticking point for Gio. However, Michael Corinthos' pep talk appears to have gone a long way for Brooklyn Quartermain, who showed up prepared to support her son, and never expecting he'd finally acknowledge that's who he is. When Dante let it rip and laid into Gio for not thinking about what Rocco might do about Professor Henry Hank Dalton all on his own, something Gio couldn't possibly have predicted, the fan base collectively sighed. We knew just where this was going. Dante is normally so level-headed, but this time around, he's furious all over again. We're struggling to understand why his rage seems targeted at Gio, in a way we've really only ever seen him show to enemies, or his father. Still, none of us saw it coming when Brooklyn opened her heart to Gio, and tried to ease his frustrations and sadness over Dante rejecting him so boldly all over again. They were just starting to get to solid ground too. Gio had finally seemed to forgive Dante for lashing out before, when Rocco got drunk at a college party, an event Dante wrongly assumed Gio had something to do with Rocco attending. It's as though he was bent on seeing the worst in his other son. But Brooklyn set the record straight. Gio just needed to hear that she didn't agree with Dante, that she felt he was wrong, and that she had no problem saying such to him. His response? Thanking her and calling her mom. And we wept. Brooklyn and Gio have officially crossed over into new territory, and she's not going to feel the slightest bit wrong about it, or about leaving Dante behind to lick his wounds. He made his bed with their son, and now he'll have to lie in it as she becomes the good cop in this co-parenting cohort. Will Gio and Brooklyn grow closer because of his heartache over feeling rejected by Dante? General Hospital spoilers and updates for Wednesday, November 26th. Tease Jason Morgan delivers a truth bomb to Lulu Spencer. Also, Brooklyn Quartermain confronts Harrison Chase and Stella Henrys on the warpath. Outside her house, Jason delivers a truth bomb to Lulu, telling her there's a reality that they need to face. No doubt he's referring to their children, Danny Morgan, and in particular, Charlotte Cassadine, regarding Rocco Falconeri. Both Danny and Charlotte embellished their accounts of what happened when they and Rocco were caught in Henry Dalton's lab by Dalton. The truth is that both were willing to lie to help Rocco get out of jail, which for the time being is no longer an issue. Rocco told some tales too. Although he told the truth later, as parents, they're going to have to take some steps with their teens to make sure they stay honest. Willow Tate is confronted by someone, most likely Michael Corinthos, although it could just as well be Liesl Obrecht or Nina Reeves. Willow just agreed, after some hesitation, to marry Drew Kane after he proposed to her again. Willow confronts right back, stating sternly, "You're here to change my mind." Michael had overheard her telling Elizabeth Baldwin at GH, and the news quickly spread to her mother and great-aunt. It doesn't sound like Willow is going to change her mind this time. In the meantime, Brooklyn is confronting Chase, undoubtedly over his quest to exonerate his ex-wife and lover Willow. It seems Brooklyn's husband has become practically obsessed over freeing his ex, while his current wife needs his support. Her father, Ned Quartermain, nearly died, and even though he's on the mend, Brooklyn needs her husband. Brooklyn is definitely not happy with Chase when she demands answers. She observes, "Means a lot to you, doesn't it?" Undoubtedly still concerned about Rocco and Dalton's accusations, Dante Falconeri tells Nathan West, "We've got to come up with an effective counter-argument." Even though Nathan got Rocco out of the juvenile detention center and his bail hearing was going to be immediate, they still have to deal with the charges. Of course, Dalton has disappeared, and a few people know why, although they're keeping it secret. Even acting district attorney Justine Turner thinks Dalton framed Rocco and then skipped town. But how long do the charges he filed stay valid? They have to do something to counter the charges and the fake photographic evidence that Dalton brought in. General Hospital spoilers suggest Rick Lansing is up to no good. At least, that's what the majority of the fan base would say if you asked them. In all the years we've known Sonny Corinthos' sinister half-brother, they've never made lasting peace. They've never seen eye to eye. They've never been on the right side of the law together, until now. Suddenly, Rick and Sonny are on the same team. And for whatever reason, the mob boss has hired his vengeful brother to defend his grandson. Even more surprisingly, Lulu Spencer, Dante Falconeri, and Laura Collins have been in agreement with this move. No one has bothered to clarify how Sonny convinced them to trust a man he himself has never trusted. So, why now? Do we trust Rick? Of course not. But what exactly does he have up his sleeve this time? For some reason, some fans are thinking Rick has turned over a new leaf. We've seen that before, though. So many times, he has come back into the picture pretending to have seen the errors of his ways. He's been singing that song since he first laid eyes on Elizabeth Baldwin this time around. But his insistence that he's ready to make peace with his brother is more than a stretch, and most fans are struggling to take the bait, for good reason. Some have theorized that Sonny is being played by Rick, and that Justine is in on it. When Justine first started flirting with Danger and flirting with Sonny, the OG fans saw this coming from a mile away. We've been around for the many, many trysts and relationships between Sonny and female members of law enforcement. Justine was no different, and their chemistry is much the same as those who came before her. Is anyone else still itching for a Reese Marshall return? Anyway, Justine put up a good fight for a while, resisting Sonny's advances and his dimples. But more recently, she's starting to warm to his good nature, even if it lends conflict over what she knows he spends his time doing. The question remains, will Rick's recent foray into the courtroom with Justine send up red flags for Sonny? This isn't a hard leap to make. At the same time that Justine is showing up in need of a tow for her car and just conveniently breaking down on the road where Sonny lives, Rick is showing up offering his support as family. What's even more astounding is that Sonny was on board with it, as though he too has completely forgotten all of Rick's past transgressions against him. The fans aren't wrong to wonder whether Sonny was vulnerable and allowed Rick into his world in a weak moment. This could tee him up for Rick and Justine to collude against Rocco Falconeri as a means of getting to Sonny.